Welcome to our one-room schoolhouse. Come on in.
In the 1880s, school was in one room. That means there was one teacher who taught all the grade levels, first through sixth grade, sometimes to the eighth grade. Imagine you'd be in school with your brother or sister or maybe a cousin. Here's a picture of a one-room schoolhouse in the 1880s. This is in the San Fernando Valley. The teachers had a big job. They had to prepare lessons for all their students at all the different grade levels, and they also had to keep the classroom clean. So every morning they would come in and they would sweep the floor, gather up the firewood, put it in the fireplace, because they wanted to make sure the classroom was nice and warm for the students, especially on cold winter mornings like we have today. The teacher would also every morning go to the well, fill up her bucket with water, and have water for the children to drink if they were thirsty. Here you go. Here's one for you. Here's one for you. What's wrong with what I'm doing? If you're saying germs, you're absolutely right, germs. But in the 1880s, they didn't know about germs. So if one student came in with a hacking cough and drank out of the ladle, and then another student drank out of the same ladle, what do you think will happen? Probably would get sick, right? There was no vaccinations for childhood diseases like measles, mumps, and chicken pox. So many children got very sick when they were young, and many children also died. Now, teachers had a lot of rules. One of the rules was the way they dressed. Women teachers had to wear long skirts with long sleeves and high collars. The men teachers, they had to wear a suit with a starched collar and tie. Also, women teachers in the 1880s, once they got married, they weren't allowed to teach anymore. They had to give up their profession and stay home to take care of their family. Whereas a man teacher, they were allowed to continue teaching because they had to support their family. You can see I dress differently than your teachers do today, right? Also, students dressed differently in those days. Boys wore short pants, long sleeve shirts with no collars. They wore a collar, a detachable collar that you could put on and take off. Remember in those days, they didn't have washing machines, so it was much easier to wash the collar, hang it up to dry, and have it ready for the following day. Boys also wore hand-me-downs. Hand-me-downs are clothes that are passed down to you or you pass down to someone else. Suspenders are worn to hold up their pants. They buckled in the front, they buckled in the back. Suspenders are very important, especially if those hand-me-downs you were wearing were too big for you. This would hold up your pants. Now, girls wore dresses. They didn't wear pants, they didn't wear shorts, they didn't wear leggings. They wore dresses, and they had usually 3 dresses. One dress that they wore every day to school, a dress for church, and if they were lucky, they had a dress for a party. So when they came to school, all the girls wore an apron or a pinafore over their dress. That was a way to keep their dress clean because it was a lot easier to wash the apron, hang it up, and have it ready for the following day rather than having to wash the whole dress. Remember, there was no washing machines. Everything was done by hand. Now, let's see what students learned in the 1800s. You're going to notice some of the things that they studied are some of the things that you study now. They had reading, arithmetic. Arithmetic is a different word for math, penmanship, history, science, and elocution. Let's talk about reading. For reading, they use a McGuffey reader, and this is for 4th grade. And this book is full with stories and poems. And in those days, for their reading lesson, they would read aloud. So the whole class would read together, and maybe the boys would read one paragraph and the girls would read the other paragraph. That was a reading lesson. For arithmetic, they used a slate. And the slate, they would write their addition problems or their subtraction problems, and they would do their computations using the slate. Penmanship, which is handwriting, cursive writing, they would use a slate where they would practice forming their letters. Now, handwriting was very important in those days. Remember, there was no phones, so you couldn't text your friend or email them if you wanted to invite them over. You would have to write a note, and they would have to write back to you. So it was very important to have good handwriting, especially since everything you did in school was going to be in cursive. So you had to practice, lots of practice of cursive writing. Let's see, history. I wonder what president they would be studying in the 1880s. Science, they studied the world around them. And since we're in Wilmington, which is really close to the ocean, they would probably have learned about sea life and the tides and maybe classifying shells. And we have elocution. Elocution is the art of speaking clearly and distinctly. And one of the lessons they would have is the following. A big black bug bit a big black bear, and the big black bear bled blood. Now, what do we call this kind of saying? Tongue twister, right. Now, do tongue twisters, are we supposed to say them slowly and deliberately? Fast. So why don't you try it with me? Let's all try it together and let's try to say it faster. Ready? A big black bug bit a big black bear, and the big black bear bled blood. Very good. Thank you so much for your attention, and I hope you learned how school in the 1880s was so different, but also very similar to the way school is today.